Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful back in the studio today to work on part 2 of our Vintage Grunge journal. If you are just joining me for the very first time, welcome. I hope if you like this video, you'll give me a thumbs up and click on subscribe so that you don't miss out. I've just started a new series that is actually kind of a volume 2 of an older series that I did last year. So if you are just joining me, I am working on volume 2 of my Bodhi journal, and there is a playlist for this series, and I'm keeping it separate from this one only because this one was a really long one and I don't want people to get confused which one they're watching. So I will put a link down in the description to the playlist for this first volume series in case you missed it. And I'll be flipping through here a little bit because the next thing we're going to do is start putting together our papers for the inside signatures. I started with the cover for this one for volume 2 because I want to keep it really close to this one. As far as size goes, I'm going to try to make myself stay within this amount. So I wanted to go ahead and get that going so that I can try to get kind of a matched set. So today what we're doing, I will put a link also down in the description for the playlist for this second volume series so that if you want to work on it, and it can be your volume 1, or maybe you're only doing one volume, or maybe you're doing a different theme. And so this is kind of basic construction using recycled food containers. And so in the first episode, I showed how I made one out of just these boxes. You'll need 2 of those, and then just decoupaged with recycled book page. And so now, and then done the paint finish to get the grungy finish on it. And then today we're just going to be putting the embellishments on and then talking a little bit about our next step, which is working on the insides. So this has been drying under books overnight, so it's nice and dry. You can see that it's nice and sturdy. So all we need to do today is really finish up with the scrim and things. So I went ahead just because I couldn't remember what I had done on this. I used scrim. I use it all the time if you've watched me for a while. I think I may put some journal size quantities in my Etsy shop. I've ordered some poly bags so that I can maybe put together some kits that will have some of my hand dyed papers that I have been kind of starting to use. I've been dyeing a lot lately, so if you've watched some of my previous videos last week, I had a couple of videos on that. So I want to work on my scrim today, but like I said, I think I'll start listing some of this stuff in my Etsy shop. I think I had used for this first piece some that I had actually rusted. So I have a whole bunch of rusted scrim, which is really a gauzy fabric, and I'm going to put it on a piece of white paper, I think, so you can kind of see my samples that I tried to recreate the same coloration that I had on my first volume. This will kind of help you see what I am looking at here. So scrim, I think this was a piece that maybe is just natural, hasn't been tea stained or anything, so it's just kind of this natural kind of a tight gauzy, I would call it. It's heavier than like cheesecloth and that kind of thing, but you can still see through it. So I really like using this, and I have a bunch. So I just did some practice pieces. So that's the original color. I had a couple of pieces that I had already stained outside with some, I don't even remember what I used, and this might have even been some flowers or rusty pieces. So I went ahead and cut 2 pieces before I started practicing so that I didn't use it all up. And my pieces for my book, I just took my old one and measured so that I had enough. I talked at the end of yesterday's video about what size you might need, so that if you wanted to look through your fabric and see what you might have, any kind of cotton, muslin, you may be doing a whole different style and want to print pattern calico fabric or something. So mine measured where I needed about 5.5 inches by about 8.5 inches so that I could have a little bit of wraparound. And I need 2 pieces. I kind of showed the one piece is going to go over the outside of my spine. I'll put that piece on first. And then the other piece, and it doesn't really have to overlap that much. You know, you can do a little less if you want, if you're limited. But one's going to go there. And then the second piece, I'm actually not going to use until the very end when we go to mount our signatures in. And I showed this a little bit yesterday, but I didn't do a very good job. So this one I'm going to actually trim maybe even a little, it's trimmed a little bit shorter and a little bit narrower than my spine because I want everything to be able to close easily. So I've just cut this extra piece. I didn't put any book page or anything on it. If your piece, and I didn't do 2 layers of this, it's going to get glued down. So it really, 1 layer is fine. So if you don't have a clean solid color, you know, here, you can either prime it, paint it, decoupage it with book page, whatever you need to do. But because mine's just craft colored, it's going to be fine. Not much of it's going to show. My signatures are all going to be here. So what I'm going to do for this piece, I'm going to glue this piece of scrim to the front side and then fold it over like this. It's going to get glued down. And then your signatures get attached to this, and then this gets glued into your spine, and then you'll glue this down to the inside of your book. So it just gives you a nice finished look. So you want your 2 pieces to be the same width because this one's going to have folded over and it's going to kind of go like that. So you can see where we're heading. This is not till the end, but you want to prepare your 2 pieces the same. So I got my 2 pieces and I wasn't sure what I had done the first time. So I did a couple little practices. You can use any colors you want. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do and what I did for my practices. Again, this was plain. You can leave it plain even. I think when I did this one, which was the first cover that I made for the first volume, and then I ended up scrapping it. I'm pretty sure I didn't even color this. I went ahead and glued it on. And then I just used my Vintage Photo Distress Oxide and went after the fact and just dirtied it up. So you can get it to be kind of as dirty or not as you want. You can use any color. I use Vintage Photo all the time, but you know, walnut stain would be good. I'm going to use today in the samples that I did because I wasn't sure again. I did this one. I used actually a spritz of Vintage Photo Distress Oxide in the spray. And I sprayed a couple spots. It was more than I wanted. So then I just went and rinsed it out in the sink and just got most of it out, which then spread it out. But you can still kind of see where I had actually sprayed. So I just wanted this, you know, old dirty kind of look. When I did that one, it wasn't quite what I'm thinking. So then I did a next one, which was this one. And it was actually this whole piece. And I did this one with the distressed ink and tried just a squirt of that. You could see where I squirted it, but then I went and rinsed it out in the sink. And so it kind of dyed everything. And then I still wasn't quite sure, you know, I was putting it up to here, and I'm realizing I'm gonna, you know, still go back with my dauber at the end. But I wasn't sure, you know, if that's what I had done. So I tried another example. And I'm only showing these in case you say, oh, I like that color, and then you want to do it. This one, I had done the whole piece with the Vintage Photo Distress ink. And then I tore it in half and went back over just this one with Antique Linen Spray Stain. And it has that little bit more yellow of a color. And, you know, that kind of looks closer to it to me. I'm not sure what I did, but I think I might do that a little bit on here, just to show you kind of how much I spritz. And then I'll use, once I glue it down, I'll use my Vintage Photo on the after the fact, and that'll darken it up too. So again, I'm not sure what I did the first time, so I'm just gonna kind of wing it and see if I can get it close. So to just distress these a little bit more, they've already been dye, you know, rusted out, but you don't have to even have done that step because you can do all of it with just your sprays, and that's just kind of a quick way to do it. So I think what I'm going to do is actually spray it onto my glass mat instead of onto my fabric, because I already have some of those spots there, and I don't want to do too much, I think. And then I'm going to add a little bit of water just to kind of thin that out, and then I can just take my fabric and wipe that up, and we'll see what happens. Do a little tiny bit more. And then I've been yesterday, if you did watch the other video, I have been using just this scrap of fabric to clean my mat off, just so it ends up grungy in the end. So you can just kind of get this wet, and it's just going to add some more color. Now, if I go and rinse this in the sink, it's going to dilute it all even more. And I don't know that I really want to do that because I kind of like seeing light and dark spots. You know, I think I had that in my first one. So I'm kind of just going to get my hands all dye here. And then, so you see it just kind of gave me some random thing. I'll show you on the white paper. You know, just kind of like that. Okay, so these are wet still. These are not very wet because I didn't rinse them in my sink. So I'm just going to go over, and you can use your heat gun and just dry these real quick. But I think I'm just going to, my iron's hot, and that is so barely damp that I think I'm just going to iron it dry. So I will be right back. Okay, so that only took me a second to dry those enough. I'm going to be gluing them down so they're going to get wet again, but this way they're nice and flat. And you can see on my first one that I did, I really like leaving all those scraggly, you know, from tearing the scrim. So if you tear whatever fabric you're doing, maybe make it a little bit wider than you're going to be doing one from scratch. I'm trying to match a previously made one. So I made a little tiny bit bigger than measuring just the fabric because I want this little, you know, fringy part on it too. So I probably didn't do enough, but you just tear it and then keep taking away the threads, and you'll get that, the more you remove, the longer your fringe will be. So this one might not end up being exactly like the other one, but it's going to be close. And as long as my two pieces, the inside and the outside, are close in width, then that's good. So I'm making some longer fringe there. And check this one and just make sure my widths are close to the same, and that's good enough. So okay, so I'm gonna choose one of these for the inside and one for the outside, and then I'm just gonna use my Mod Podge again, get all these extra threads off, and try to get this centered. So I can actually maybe measure so that I get it nice and centered. So my piece is, let's see, my piece is, exactly 5.5. That makes it easy. Okay, so the center of my, let's see if I can just eyeball. Here's my 5.5. So that is like an inch. Where's my half? 1.5 inches and 1.5 inches. So I have 1.5 inches on either side. So depending on the width of your spine, you're going to see mine is 1.5 inches wrapped around my spine. So when you're trying to decide how wide you want, mine ended at 5.5 by 8.5, I think. I will just kind of, maybe I'll make a pencil mark, and then I can see that if I cover that to 5.5, and maybe do it again down here so that I get it kind of straight. Okay, now I'll aim for there. So I'm just going to use my Mod Podge again, my matte Mod Podge, the same that I used to decoupage yesterday. And I don't need too much today because I'm only doing those couple of pieces. So I can just, if I can kind of see where my line is and just put glue there, that might make it easier. One thing I should show you, you see how, because this was inked, when I use my Mod Podge on here, it moves that around. So that gives it that kind of more yellow color too. And then I don't maybe have to worry about that because that's from the Vintage Photo Oxides. You know, if you've used oxides or watched Tim Holtz tutorials and stuff, you know, they have a reaction. And so that's why you get that kind of more yellow where I've put the glue. And then I'm just gonna try to find my line. I don't see my other one, but I think it's about there. Okay, and then just smooth that out. And again, it doesn't matter so much how much it wraps around. I may even trim some of that. Just like that. And then I want to, I do want to get my little bits here, you know, stuck down. So I'm going to carefully, I'm going to try not to wet this too far in because I don't want all that color smeary there. So I kind of just made sure that my little fringes will fan out, but I don't want to mess up my ink. I'm going to go back with my, after this dries, with my vintage photo again anyway, and dirty it up some more. But it's kind of nice if you have these little fringy bits kind of stuck down. And you don't have to do that. Maybe you don't like the fringy bits. Maybe you're using this kind of pattern for making this book cover, but with a whole different style for yourself, you know. Okay, so that is stuck down good. And then I want to wrap it around on the inside. And I don't have to have it be that long. I could actually trim it a little bit, but it's gonna get covered up with another layer too. Where is my credit card? I don't know, but I will use this just to get into where I have that gap. Okay, and then that's going to dry and be our book cover. So I'm going to let that dry while I do that inside piece. And then this will be ready, dry enough for me to do my vintage photo and do the last few touches. So I'll set that there. And then I need this piece. And again, I want that centered too. So luckily I can kind of eyeball it, but maybe what I'll do, this would be the smarter thing, is to set this here and put the glue down, and then that way I can line up exactly where that fold over is, and then I know I'm going to be even. So almost didn't get enough glue on here. So I'm doing it on what seems like the right side because I want to see that. That's what I'm going to see through, not the printed side. Okay, and then I have that centered there. When this gets glued down, my fringe and all that is even. This is a little off. Okay, and now I just need to do this on my other sides. And then that will be ready to go when, you know, way at the end when we're ready to. This is pretty long on this side. I don't really need that much. I think I'll trim some off. Okay, so this will be the piece that we use to attach our signatures way at the end of this project. Okay, so now I just need to put this aside and not lose it. So we will maybe stick it in the old one and then I won't. Okay, so next thing I want to do for this one is I have this I can work on, or in this if I'm not quite ready to distress, but we'll see if it's dry enough. I think it probably is, and I didn't even use a heat gun on it or anything, and you could if you wanted to, but I think that's fine. So I'm just going to take I'm going to lay my other one here so I can see. Again, you're doing one, so it doesn't matter maybe, but I want to try to get it that color. And you know, it could have been too, if I had but I don't feel like it. I was trying to feel this to see if it felt like I did a layer of Mod Podge on the outside, because if I had, that would make that yellow maybe come through, but I'm going to try just doing this and see what happens. Because I do want to grunge that up a little bit. I don't know if that makes it where you can't see what I'm doing. So mostly like where the hairy fringe is, I like to get, and the edges. And you do want to do the inside. That's going to just show on the edge. And maybe where some of the wider, spots are, just to dirty those up. And then of course this edge. And that may have been all I did. Let's see. Yeah, it's looking more like it. So maybe a little tiny bit more. And now at least I'll have a video and know what I did if I ever want to recreate this. But the nice thing is, if I'm doing another whole journal, different theme and all that, it doesn't really matter. Coordinated but not identical. Oops. But that's pretty good. Okay, now I know what I did. Okay, so I'm finished with that. And now I just have the little embellishments. So for my closure on this one, these little things are not even glued down. These are little binder clips that I rusted. And I think I might put at least one, maybe one or two. I'll have to see how many parts I have and how much of this rusty screen I have left. Put together, maybe not with this little title, because yours might be different, but put some of these bits together just for a journal and sell them in a little kit with some dyed paper or something. To do this one, I made a little hole with my crocodile, probably. I think I had this by then. And then I've already rusted out my little eyelets. And then I had some screen, this actually goes with that I just folded in half so it went over the whole thing. So I need to do that first because my eyelet goes on the outside of that. I was just trying to find some, grungy elements to add to my journal. So I think I'm gonna go like this instead of measuring. This actually is a little tiny bit shorter than the other one. I couldn't find the same exact box, so I had to just use what I had. So I'm just gonna kind of eyeball. That's probably 1/4 inch or so in from the 1/2 inch. So I went 1/2 inch in from the edge. So I'm gonna call it right there and make a little mark. And then I think I'll measure this one so it's the same. So that was 3 3/4 down. I guess I should decide what my top and bottom is. I think I like this for the front. So 3 3/4 down and 1/2 inch in. So 3 3/4. This one's a little less than 1/2 inch in. That's close enough. So I think I'm just gonna eyeball all this, I think. So that kind of, well, let's see, I should fold this in half. And it's kind of fragile because it's rusty screen. And it's grungy, so it's not perfect, but that's okay. So I can see my dot, so I'm just gonna kind of wrap that around my edge. Like that. And then I'm gonna use my art glitter glue. And this is not going to dry as fast as I want it to here, but I think if I do this and clamp it, by the time I do the other side in the back, I'll be able to come back and finish this. Okay, so I'm going to leave those clipped for a minute. Hopefully they're even. They look okay to me. So I'm going to let those dry for a minute, and I'll work on the back plate. For the back plate, I used a piece of the screen again, and I'll kind of measure how far down, because these are going to sit next to each other on a shelf, so I do want them to be even. So this one, of course, my books aren't exactly even either, so let's see. Okay, you're not going to be able to see this, but I need to see where even is. Since they are a little bit different, this one's a little tiny bit shorter than the other one, so I want to eyeball it. I think that's going to be good. So I'm going to put some glue under there real quick, just so I don't lose where it goes. Now, on the last one, I'm gonna have to put something heavy on this. So this needs to set up for a minute. I honestly don't remember how I did it before, but I want to kind of glue that down. On this one, I used this plate, and I'm going to do the same thing there. And it has an eyelet on it, but I can't tell. I don't think I went through the whole book because I know my eyelet's not that thick. So I think it's all just for looks. I think I did it just to this plate and then glued everything down. So I'm gonna let some of this sit up a little bit, and I can put more even from the top of this. And so I think what I'll do while this dries for just a minute is we'll go through the other one to kind of talk about signatures, and then I'll come back and do this. Otherwise, I'm just doing lots of editing, which I guess I can do. Okay, so those need to set up a little bit like they are, and then I'll finish adding the rest to this. I think that'll just be easier. So I'm gonna put a lead block on that. Okay, so for the inside papers, I want to start thinking about this volume 2, and I'm not sure how I'll approach it. When I did this one, I did each signature just as kind of a part of the series. I worked on one, then I worked on the next one and the next one. So some of them have similar papers that I wanted to kind of use throughout, so it had some continuity. But then each one also kind of fit the theme of that signature. So because Bodie is a ghost town, I made each signature kind of fit a building or a group of buildings sort of thing. This one is more of a single building. The next one I think is going to be a combo, just because I want to keep it confined to that size. So in this one, the first signature was the house. The second signature was a church. The last signature was a schoolhouse. And for the next volume, I want to do like the mercantile, and maybe that combined. That might be on its own, I'm just not sure. Or it might be like that with some sort of a tailor or something like that, or pharmacy or something. And then I want to do one that is like a hotel saloon kind of thing. And then maybe one is, maybe the last one is the mine, because it was a mining town. So I'm not even sure. That's how not far I am along. But I thought I would go through, if you've not watched this first one, and talk a little bit about the papers. That way, if you're going to follow along, you can kind of get some papers together made or whatever you want to do. So I used a lot of vellum in mine. I wanted that whole look of looking through windows, because that's how you tour Bodie. You don't go inside. You look through windows and you see through a doorway and you see through another room, that sort of thing. And you walk around the whole perimeter and just look through all these dirty windows. So I used a lot of vellum for that. And then a lot of my photos, I used photos that I took, which is in color, and printed onto vellum. The other ones, I manipulated those through a filter and made them look like vintage photos, but they are my original photos. I have made a lot of this stuff available in a freebie file that I have put in the description of each episode of this. So I will continue with that also. I'm going to be doing a kit at the end in my Etsy shop, but there are some freebie things in there now. So I'll check out and see what's there, and I may add to it from time to time too. So I used vellum. Vellum's fragile. When you fold it in half, it'll crack. So on the vellum pages, I actually used some of my fabric. We'll pretend this is it, but it's not. I did a bunch of rusted out fabric. So I would take a piece like this and reinforce my spine of my vellum pages. So, you can do some of those ahead if you want. Then I used, this is just baking parchment, but for me, it was to mimic like in a book, which I just had a huge haul score of old books this week. I did a video about these, my little shopping spree, showing what I found, because I couldn't even believe it. If you want to see it, let me know and I will upload it. But I did it and I wasn't sure I was going to share it. So old books, though, have this kind of tissue liners with photos, sometimes. So I kind of use that as something to kind of divide my signature. So this is one signature. So it starts out with my vellum, and then the next page was my tissue paper. I really wanted that on the front as like, the beginning of a book. Back here was the end of that signature, so I actually, attached something to it. So, baking paper, deli paper, vellum, that kind of thing, knowing that it's going to be fragile, but that's kind of the whole thing about this book. I go through it and everything kind of gets worn. Then I had painted a whole bunch of what I called Fresco Finishes to use for backgrounds that looked like old plaster walls. And I'm using the originals in mine, but I scanned them all and put them in my Etsy shop. So if you haven't seen this, these are my Fresco backgrounds, and they're all on a half page. So you can fold them in half and then just trim them to the size of your book if you want to use them that way. I actually am working on another journal, which is here. If you've been watching those other episodes of me painting paper and whatnot, I'm starting one where I'm using those two paper packs. I'll show you the second one real quick too, but this one's Fresco Finishes, and then I printed them onto coffee stained dyed paper. And then this is going to be one of the wallpaper ones I'll show you. So there's two paper packs. One's Fresco Finishes that look like old plaster stained walls. And then the other one is a distressed wallpaper pack. So both of these were done on my jelly plate. And this is to kind of make it look like, I printed that one on fabric. I printed one on vellum just so you can see. But they're all to look like old wallpaper, with plaster and water stains. And some of these I actually, it's just layers of my hand painting over a photo of the actual, like this one, you can see all the water stains. That is actually a photo I took of wallpaper in a house in Bodie. And then I used that as a background and did my own faux wallpaper finish on top of it. So these are also available in my Etsy shop. So if you want to get those paper packs, you can use those. And then I just printed them on coffee stained paper. that I made. And I've ordered some poly bags. I think I'm going to put together some kits of my dyed papers in case you don't want to dye your own. And then you can get those in the Etsy shop too. So I need to put those things together still. So I used vellum, this kind of stuff, baking paper, Fresco paper, the vintage wallpaper looking paper, and then just other. This is one of the photos I had done on vellum. And like I said, these photos you can get actually are freebies. And I may put more when I do my Etsy shop, but these are all just those hand-painted papers. And then this is just some thinner coffee-stained paper ephemera printed onto that. And I'll maybe include some of those things too in my, I just haven't done it all yet, but I used some Tim Holtz cards. Those actually went really well with the theme. This is done on vellum. I did these bottles to look like, which I actually took, if you haven't seen this one, I actually took photos of all my vintage bottles and then made digitals out of those too. So here's more vellum, just trying to see what all I use. I even did some, coffee stained lined paper, ledger paper, that kind of stuff all works. It's pretty much everything, I think. Some old pattern paper, just again some coffee stained paper. And this you can either print your ephemera collages and things onto coffee stained paper, or in this case I actually printed it on white paper and then coffee stained it, so it's all even more kind of blurry and faded looking. You can print onto fabric. I did some. This is a little fabric pocket. Music paper. This is from an old hymnal that I have, and it's really old. So maybe I'll have to look at the date on it and think if I can scan some of that too. Some of these things I made that are going to be part of the kit. Old music paper, some lace. So the new things that I do in the next one will go with the theme of, the mercantile. So I'll probably use like lots of ledger paper, some old receipts if I can find that kind of thing. And again, this has actually worked out great for like the whole kind of chalkboard theme. One of the papers in that Fresco Finish is really dark with like a black undertone. Graph paper this is actually Tim Holtz, but you can, coffee stain some graph paper would be good for the school. Some lined paper, again. Different kind of lined paper, that elementary school paper. So that's about all I really used, is all kind of paper that I had even made in that. So I'll be doing something similar in the other one, so you can just kind of start getting your mind going what your theme is going to be, and then maybe collecting different kind of papers, weights, textures, all that kind of stuff to do your signatures, because I think that might be the next thing that I do on the inside. Like I said, when I did this one, I did like a signature. I didn't have all the signatures in and then decorate them. I did them as I went because I did a lot of sewing and I didn't want to attach everything into my book before I knew I had all the sewing and things done. And I'll probably approach the other one the same way. I may, just because I'm trying to confine myself to a certain size, I may go ahead and get the number of pages and that kind of thing, get my signature papers together. I just won't attach them until I'm done, I think. So that's kind of my plan. Let's see if that is dry enough to work with again. Okay, this is stuck down enough because I'm just going to add more glue to it anyway. And then hopefully I didn't glue my clips to this. So those are dry enough. I might need those again. Let's just double check that I lined that up pretty good. Okay, so for this part, I'm just going to kind of eyeball. I can't see my little mark anymore, but I'm gonna wing it. I'm gonna go like this, I think, and just eyeball. So I think I just used the small, let's see what size my eyelid is. That is the small hole, I think. Okay, so if you haven't used this before, this is a crocodile. It's the small one. I'm going to use the small. There's a large punch and a small punch, and then you use the coordinating one. And I'm going to use the small punch. Okay, so I'm going to punch a hole. Make sure I'm kind of centered. Okay. And then roughly get the other side. And hope they're close. I think they're close enough. Okay, so that punched my hole. And then I want to, before I put this in, I want to actually thread my tie through there. That way it'll grab it. So I just want to make sure that'll fit. So I have cut 2 pieces of some of my rusted cotton fabric that's really grungy. And these are probably, I don't know how wide that is. Let's see. Close to 1/2 inch wide. And then you could do yours any length, but this seems to be a good bow size. About 9 inches is what I cut for this. And then I'm going to just put this through the hole if I can. I'll use a bead reamer to poke that through. And that way it'll capture my eyelet. When I install it, will capture that piece of fabric and hold it in there. If my hole is big enough now for my eyelet, I might need to make it. This is just a bead reamer. It's just kind of handy to have over here too, because you often need to make a hole a little bit bigger. Maybe if I come at it from this side. With that screen on there and that fabric, it's just like one other extra layer of stuff. Because that is so tight, it's barely, I'm gonna try to push it through before I use my crocodile, because if it doesn't catch on this side, then it's not gonna hold it in. This is kind of thick for how big my eyelet is. I need kind of a taller shank. Okay, I don't know if you can see that, but I had to get that all the way through before I use this other side here. I know I'm not on camera, but I can't see what I'm doing. Sorry about that, but I had a little trouble with my crocodile. Some of my eyelets are, I try to put them on something too thick for how tall that shank is. And this is one of those cases. So when I feel like I'm not sure it flared everything out like it should, I go and I get my sandbag and my steel block and this little eyelet setting tool, and that way I can just hammer it and make sure I know it's attached. So I'm gonna do that. So then for the next little thing, I just added these just to have another little extra something. Let's see, let me put it on here first. Attach that and then run this through here so that I could just lay those flat. So it's just another a little detail. And this side I actually put my string on the wrong side. I needed to have it coming over here. So it's actually going to be fine though, because I'm going to put this little thing on it too. This is why I don't do stuff on camera a lot, because I do screw up things like that. I wasn't paying attention to myself, but that'll be fine because it's just going to hide that anyway. And actually I can trim that little bit off. There. Okay, so that's my closure. That looks pretty good. This is the front. Okay. And that's on there. And now I just need my rest of my plate. I'm gonna have to put a little bit more glue on these edges because I don't want them to poke me. Okay, so for this, this was just a brass, one of those little, goes on the front of a cabinet and then the little thing slides in. So I'm gonna put that to the side and I think I'll glue that all down. So I want a little hole. I think I'm gonna, let's see, I'm gonna trim it a little tiny bit so I don't have anything showing. To make this little tag, I photocopied. I'm not good at like lettering and all that kind of stuff yet. So I found a font I liked and I just typed it, you know, into my computer and then printed it onto a piece of my rusted fabric. And then that way I trimmed it a little bit so I won't hopefully see that through there. But I think just to be safe, I will dirty my edges. I like the idea of using fabric because it's going onto fabric just for that extra texture, you know, instead of doing it onto paper or something. So I think I'll just glue it to that and then make little holes and then put these eyelets through. And actually on that one, those other one, I used an eyelet. So let's see. So I think first let me glue this. Okay, so I've just glued my fabric label to the back of my thing there. And then I'm going to punch a hole. It's just one more little detail. Not necessary, but I like my little details. So I'm doing this off to the side because I don't want to break my mat pounding on it. Okay, and then I'm going to put in my little brad. You could make these go through your book if you want, because you are going to end up covering, you know, this part. Okay, so I'm going to put my brad in here. And then I'm going to have to trim those a little shorter or kind of bend them so you don't see them. Like that. And then I can glue that whole thing down. Okay, I have my brads in there and then I just, you know, bent them so that they won't stick out. And then I'm just going to glue that whole bit down there and we will be finished with that too. And you can use, I'm going to use this art glitter glue and hope it sticks. I can't remember. I may have used like E6000 or something on the other one. We'll do this first. And then in a future video, I'll let you know if I had to beef it up. But I think this should work. This holds pretty much everything. Especially if I set my lead weight on it. I have these lead weights that my husband brought me from work one day when he saw I was always holding large bolts of fabric on my table and they would slide around. So he said, you need some lead weights to hold that down. Just want to make sure I'm kind of the same. Okay, I'm going to go put a weight on that and just let it sit. And that will be it for today for this cover. So you want to maybe think about getting together some papers that you might want for your signatures. Maybe think about what you want. You know, I don't know if you're doing a ghost town themed journal. You know, you may have a different theme. So, and just yours is just grungy. So for whatever theme you might want to think about what papers, what your signatures are, if they have a theme. I do have, like I said, I have a prompt list in the freebies for this theme. I will go back and look at that. I haven't even looked at it in a while, and just make sure that my prompts also address volume 2, because originally I was only doing one volume. So that's that for today. Next up, signatures. I may do something else in between. I don't know. I'm mixing it up because I'm also working on this. I'm thinking I might do an open spine thing. Again, kind of a grungy journal, but maybe like a blank journal. You know, I've already gone through and put my papers. I used those entire 2 packs and printed them on coffee paper. And so I may start a series on this. And then I also want to work on, I have been asked when I would do another page on this. This is more of an art journal. You can write in it. You know, there's lots of journaling spots in here too. Little cards and things. And it's the theme of this one is things with wings. And so I am almost to halfway here. Just finished up one on bats in October, and that's how long it's been since I picked it up. So I'm going to have a folded heart in here, I think, and then I have the second half to do. And this is an altered book, so it's a totally different format. So if you've never worked with an altered book, this is a fun series to watch, and it included me painting the cover too. So anyway, you'll find this one. It's called Use Your Wings in the playlist. That's it for today. Have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.